All right, welcome back to the Homeschool Dads podcast. This is a camp edition. We're outside. We are in West Virginia, but today I have a special guest, Justin Ridgeway. He's got military experience, currently works as a banker, and occasionally wears salmon pants to work. Let's get into it. All right, Justin, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. As you know, our audience here is Homeschool Dads. You are a homeschool dad. Can you talk to us just a little bit about kind of how long you guys have been homeschooling and just a quick picture of kind of how homeschool looks for your family?
Yeah, so we decided to homeschool early on. I was public schooled. My wife was actually homeschooled. So I had thought about it at times in my life, but, without really knowing any information about it, to me, it was just like, those bunch of nerds, all the cool kids that go to school.
Yeah.
Well, as society started shifting more toward an immoral compass, being wanting to set kids up for a great foundation, first and foremost with their relationship with God, but two, that helps them become better contributors to civilization. I asked her more questions about, what was your homeschool life experience? Tell me a little bit more. And we talked about it quite a bit, because it's a wise should communicate. But a good thing.
I do, man. Yeah, if you're not talking, make sure you're talking.
But it was helpful for me to see a different perspective on it. And I knew that we would have more time with them. We would have more opportunity to not have to unlearn any negativity that they were picking up on or finding out from school. We knew we could control the narrative, so to speak, because whether we're going to brainwash our kids or somebody else is going to brainwash our kids, it just has to be those two choices of life, the tree of life or the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So it was a no-brainer for us. She wanted to be a stay-at-home mom anyway. She wanted to be a homemaker. She's VP of operations. So it made sense to have someone who was capable, who also knew the understanding behind it. But also we live in South Carolina. It's a very conservative-oriented state in many regards, and that's a blessing for you can have home births, you can do a lot of things such as have homeschool and not have a lot of negativity to it. The school or the state actually is pretty supportive of that. So it works for us because we kind of designed early on before we had kids, the strategy. So it wasn't just oh no, we got kids, now what do we do? And I was like, all right, kid, when we have kids, this is how we're going to raise them. This is what we're going to put into it. Homeschool was just a part of that process.
So I'm a big proponent of proper planning prevents poor performance. So proper planning prevents poor performance.
Yeah, the Marine Corps says 7. They throw an extra explicit in there, so I kind of cut it out to make them more eco-friendly for the Christian organizations out there. So this is 6 fees instead of the 7 fees.
Okay. All right, awesome. So as long as you're planning ahead, it sounds like you guys as a family planned to homeschool. It wasn't like you said. I think a lot of people who are just now starting, they're reacting to something that happened in the public school. And they're saying, this is no good. We got to do something different. And now they homeschool like, what are we going to do? But if you guys had a plan, it seems like it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old. Like, you're doing that. Yeah. So that's awesome. And how old are your kids?
So we've got 2 children. Celia's 10, Omri's 6. And we try to just be intentional. And I think that's vital for us as parents. And I think it's vital as I watch parents around. Be intentional with what's going to happen to your kids. It's a strategic opportunity. Sometimes we always say it's okay to take that tactical loss for strategic gain. Sometimes the kids don't get to do all things that they think the society is supposed to do, but we're strategically looking at it as long term. They're going to be good fathers. They're going to be good mothers. They're going to be contributors to the economy, and they're going to be making those decisions one day. And we're not going to be around. I always tell them, like, what's your decision when Dad's not going to be here? So I think, thankfully, any of you guys that are out there who are watching this who aren't married yet and are thinking about that specific other, find a woman who's a strategic thinker just like you are. Don't be a strategic thinker and line yourself up with someone who thinks about the moment. Because I think my wife, being able to see that, being able to have that on my team has been vital for what we do, what the kids are now not bouncing around like ping pong balls. They've got organization, they've got strategy, they've got focus and intentionality, and that's key.
Yeah. And it's starting to rain, so I think we're going to try to do a short episode today. You mentioned 2 things as you were talking about how you approach homeschool. You said negativity twice, and that's interesting to me because, as I know you, you're very positive. Tell me a little bit about why you think positivity is so important. it's particularly from the perspective of being a dad, homeschooling your family, whether you're the active educator or whether you're just bringing the theme or the mission to homeschooling. Why is positivity so important?
Positivity is only important if we are making active decisions for just being disciplined. It's very difficult to be positive and not be disciplined. A lot of people who are making some undisciplined decisions, most of the time they're the ones that are blaming everybody else for their decisions that they're making. Someone who's a disciplined thinker, they're going to see solutions to issues that arise. And a lot of your action really precedes your emotion. So if you're actively planning ahead, if you're actively seeking those solutions, like, hey, I wake up today, what am I going to get to do today? Instead of waking up and saying, man, I got to react to this day today. Okay, well, I got this going on. I got it anyway. What is my opportunity? So I've learned that from many years of just, difficult decisions, non-difficult decisions. And Marine Corps was pretty good at helping us focus on you wake up and you attack today. I love Jim Harbrough's, I don't know if I'd necessarily love his teams that he's with and whatnot, but his wake up every day with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind is fantastic. And you may sometimes have to fake it till you make it, but that's good because you're setting the habit for different pieces of life. And I think if you build that habit, at least in my own life, I've seen that my actions will then precede my emotions. And that positivity has come from a lot of this little thing that I do daily. Like Admiral McCraven would say, make your bed. That's a key, man, because I do come home and I look at my bed, I'm like, I'm with that. That was pretty good. Okay. And every day I'm thinking about my little decisions and they're little solutions, they're little opportunities that I have. And being positive has amplified now that strategy. And I think positivity in my own case and in my own life is something that I've just seen that kind of adds the fuel to the fire, so to speak. It's kind of like motivation. Motivation is going to be there, but it's also going to subside. And positivity is going to be there. And sometimes positivity is going to subside because God gave us with all kinds of opportunities for emotions. Ecclesiastes 3 talks about that. We're going to have time for being positive. You're going to have a time for being negative because someone's going to die or someone's going to have some situation happen. Someone's going to have pain. You have to be on that level at that time. And that's why I appreciate banking, because people come in, you don't know where they're at in their life, and just listen to them for a little bit. You understand what person I have to be today, because it's not that we're changing a character in the wrong way. You're adapting to people's necessary needs. And I feel like that positive proactivity allows me to then adjust along the fly, like we're playing a life game, so to speak, on the floor, because coaches will have a strategy, but they're not positive. They're not looking at that solution. The other coaches might eat them alive.
Yeah.
And positive to me is that key. So it adds the fuel. It's kind of like the high octane fuel that's put in a race bar versus like the 89 that's making your ting and bolt. You can choose it too. You can choose positivity. I tell my kid, you can if you think you can. Norman Vincent Peale, he wrote that book, You Can If You Think You Can. That's a key aspect in my life. And I think one of my Navy buddies told me, IMOD, integrated material over time, IMOTS. He said one of the premier pieces of IMOTS, integrated material over time, you're integrating material with people. You're integrating a solution here. You're integrating a titty here, a little bit, an opportunity that I learned in life here. And when your kids start reciting that back to you, that's the culmination of IMOT. And so my kids now are like, you got this, Dad. You can if you think you can.
Oh, nice.
I might not need the encouragement, but I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. Cutting some vegetables. I appreciate that, man. That's great. And when you're a positive person, people feed off energy. That's something I've fully noticed. And when you're a positive person, they see it as like, okay, first, this person's different, but I'm curious, like, why? And so it's a way to really be a life example to God in so many ways, to one, give them that positive energy, but two, also tell her how to have that solution from. Yeah. And it's been fun to watching my kids because they're learning everything. They're like little sponges. Whatever you feed at them, they're going to suck it in. Sure. And they actually will start self-talking themselves in certain situations. Like, that's not how you got to do it this way. It's a better solution. And they're doing those little tactics because it's they've seen Dad be positive. I can be positive. And I always ask them, like, if they're in a little negative day or having some situations, I always encourage them, like, okay, think about when this started. When did you start feeling like this? And
do they usually have an answer to that question?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they have to think about it. We have to walk about it together.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of you out there are Christians, but there is a spirit world. And so I always try to encourage them, God's the positive thinker, he's the proactive thinker. Satan's the lazy Vicky. Everything is handed to him and he still isn't got the best life. Core thing, like, oh man, here I'm this perfect angel. And it sucks that I'm not God the Father. Terrible.
Yeah.
And so I always try to encourage them, like, did you notice a certain thing that you did the day before? Did you notice a certain thing that you did here? Did you notice a shift? And I always encourage, like, who do you think is helping you shift that way? Who do you think's on the back door looking in, trying to get you to shift that thinking? And oftentimes, even if they don't want to, I'll say, well, let's just maybe pray about it a little bit. And you can immediately see a shift. And you can see a shift of just getting that spiritual realm focus, then helps us see, okay, that physical is connected to that in so many different ways. And so me as a positive thinker, I'm always understanding that God's either driving a positive, Satan's either driving the negative. And being able to fight that battle, being in the military, you're always fighting those battles and helping my kids think the same thing. Like, hey, I know you're struggling right now. You're in a war. Like, go at it. And then they come out like, I did it, Dad. Kick shaped in the face today. And I'm like, you sure did. And who else here? You're like, Jesus. It really is cool.
Okay, so do you think that were you just born a positive thinker, or do you have to are there tactics, are there strategies to help you realign to positivity? And if there are, what are some things that we should encourage other fathers who maybe they're watching this like, oh, that guy's he's just positive. I can't be like that. I'm no. What are some things, if there are any, that can help a dad who's maybe down for whatever reason to make that shift, even if it's a small shift towards positivity?
We're all born with certain character traits, certain attributes that God gives us. God didn't want yellow pencils. I think that's very important for us to see. And we all have environments. Unfortunately, a lot of us come from negative environments. A lot of people come from situations that they're just given certain cards dealt with. I had an example of a young man that used to work at a gym as a personal trainer, and he had cerebral palsy. So part of his left side was just very withered. And one day we're just chatting and I just quizzing him about his cerebral palsy and just kind of how he focuses. Cause he was a very positive guy, but he had no reason to be positive because he had a lot of physical issues. And he said, Justin, I think God gave me this opportunity with cerebral palsy because he knew I could handle it. And man, I still remember that on a regular basis. Like, I do believe that he could handle a crappy situation. Your positivity comes and goes in certain ways, like I was talking about earlier, but your environment does play a lot of keys. And even the Bible talks about you don't want to put yourself around negative people because evil company corrupts good character. If you can tell, if you're paying attention, you're going to separate yourself from that, or you're going to purposely choose to be in situations like that. I do believe that we all should be paying attention to every aspect, every decision, every effect of that decision. Always analyze your surroundings. Always analyze your self-reflection and say, hey, what happened here? What's going on? Because it's like you're running your own business in your own life. And so positivity, you have to pay attention to it. You have to pay attention to, okay, I was negative today. Why was I negative today? Okay, well, I had these situations happen today. Well, I was more positive in this situation. And over time, you're seeing your teammates, you're seeing your friends. Everybody's going through a certain situation, but we're all together in it. And I think one of the fun parts of the Marine Corps was you had to embrace the suck. That was something I said, embrace the suck. And we never really kind of grasped it early on because you're like, oh, you're just a junior Marine, you're excited, you're just kind of wanting to be there. But over time, I realized, like, okay, today it's pouring rain, it's cold today, it's nasty. But so-and-so's in it with me, like, how can we make this better? And you started learning that, okay, this is a sucky environment. Okay, well, what are we going to do about it? There's nothing else we can do except be there in this environment. You would find ways to be more positive, to endure the suffering. I think that's a critical biblical example that God wants us to go through trial. He wants to go through suffering. And knowing that everybody's got their own suffering around you, but how can I help as a teammate to this person? How can I be a better teammate in life and society? I'm a fan of traveling to other countries, seeing what people don't have versus what the United States does have. What's their perspective of life? How are they positive without something? And I'm not as positive with the grand blessings that I have in the United States. And constantly analyzing those opportunities. Those are kind of like big picture items of the positivity. You're born with certain environments. You're born with certain character pieces. You're a person that's in life or not in life.
What do you mean in life or not in life?
You're either paying attention or you're not paying attention to it. You're either
You're involved or
yeah, you're active. And I love Christ say, he said, the kingdom of God does not come with observation. Like, you are in the arena, you are fighting, you're a violent taker of this king. You're fighting against all this evil forces that you either may see or may not see, because either you're distracted or not distracted, you're paying attention or not paying attention. One of the things I appreciate too is not making myself a victim. I'm a fan of extreme ownership. So as a dad, if my family's suffering, it's like the Kings and Chronicles, and Kings and Chronicles of Judah and Israel. The king would do well, the nation would do well. The king would do terrible, the nation would do terrible. So if there's something going on in my family structure, I'm always looking, okay, what am I doing? Because as a fan of extreme ownership, Jocko Willink and you fans out there for that, you got to look at, like, whatever it is, whatever's going on in life, if I'm a leader, it's on me. And that's key for my responsibility, but it's also key for my kids and my wife to see he's not blaming us for all this stuff that's going on. So he's not reacting and causing us to feel like we can't handle more, we can't do more. And saying, hey, no, we're all going to get this together, but I'm going to focus on me to see how I can get us to a better point. Because if we're suffering right now, it's probably something I'm doing that I need to fix or change, and I'll go to God in that aspect, in that regard. So extreme ownership's key in a bigger picture thing, but you wanted some like concrete tactics. Okay.
Yeah. So I want somebody who's like, oh man, but what if I'm just not positive?
Yeah.
What can I do to get 1% more positive?
I always ask them. I said, someone's like, you're just a positive guy. I'm not. I got all these issues. And I say, well, thank you for telling me all the issues you got in life. Can you tell me anything that you got going on in your life that's working? Like, I wouldn't say be positive. Like, what worked for you today? What went well? Did you breathe today? That's a win. I mean, you don't even think about breathing. I think that's probably one of my coolest aspects. My father says all I got to do to wake up 100, go to 100 is wake up every day. And so that's key wisdom. You just got to wake up.
Just wake up.
You're already winning. But that's a win. Like, how are you shifting your thinking? That's why I said your thinking, your action, that's going to precede your emotion. So if you're constantly thinking about what I don't have, of course, you're not going to have any reason in your own narrative, your own theater to be positive. But if you shift it, okay, let me challenge myself today. I'm going to at least find one thing that wins for me today. And if you can find one thing, I'm not saying like Tim Ferriss, the fan of the 4-hour work week, but he breaks things down simplistic that even Barney can teach a child how to figure this out. So that's another Marine Corps term. We're going to break it down Barney style. We're going to say one item that I can be positive with. Everybody out there can focus on one thing that they're positive about, one thing they're thankful about. Whether it's the clothes we have, whether it's, hey, I used the restroom today and it didn't hurt. That's a win. Anything. And that's what I'm saying. Make it silly, just dumb it down, break it down so a 3-year-old will be like, oh, that's positive. That's awesome. And if you can do that, and if you can focus on it, write it down, you won that day in some arena. Everything else might have been terrible, off the wall, crazy. You at least won one thing. Next day, can you find 2 things? Take it one step. And that's a beauty of training in the military. We start with, it's called the full 30-inch step. And most enlisted guys can't go past 30 years. So there's the big picture, the 30 years. But what was the beginning? You took a full 30-inch step. Your steps of your progress are then going to get to you to that 30-year mark. So that's the same thing with anything in life. Everest doesn't climb. Whoop, we just jumped to the top. No, you got to go step by step, by climb, jot by jot, tittle by tittle. If we can do that, I guarantee you every single one here watching this podcast will have no excuse whether you want to not be positive or not. You're choose something every day, one thing to be positive, you add it on to that second thing. Okay, there's 2 things I'd be positive because I can bank on yesterday. There are 2 things that you get the 10 weeks or you get the 10 days and you still are not positive. You're just not wanting to do positive. I mean, that's just the reality. Sometimes we just have to accept willpower. Like, I can tell a negative person all day long, but if they just don't want to be positive, right? I think Thomas Jefferson said there's nothing on earth that, and someone who's negative, there's no positive person on earth and no positive thing can get that person out of that. But there's also no Like if you're a super positive person and someone else is trying to bank you off that big mountain that you've already built, there's nothing they can do to take you off that positive mountain. So it's a big dynamic shift, but it starts with the very simple process of everyday things. I tell my kids, did you tie your shoes today? Great. That's a win. I mean, anything else can happen. You won. Yeah, take it.
Oh, that's awesome. And so in psychology, there's this term called positive sentiment overall or negative sentiment overall. So in relationships, so if you're arguing with your wife and you get mad, and all you see is, oh, she's just so fill in the blank negative thing. All you see is that negative sentiment. Like, oh, she's lazy. I'm gonna make this. She's so lazy, and you don't see all the things where she did hard work and she wasn't lazy. You don't see it because in your head you said she's lazy. And when you were talking about find this positive, I think makes me think of that so much. If you can just think of something positive, even if you are a negative person, say, I went to the bathroom, I tied my shoe, I reached up in the cabinet, got a coffee cup, and it didn't hurt my shoulder. Because think of all the people who they can't lift their arm because their shoulder hurts.
Yeah.
The
one got cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
It just one hand. But he's like, I'm winning.
Yeah, I'm winning. So even just this saying, no, I'm winning, or I'm a winner.
Yeah.
I think for homeschool dads, because there are, and I fully believe this, when you are a homeschool family and the father has made the choice that we're going to take the responsibility away from government schools, the easy thing is to send your kids to government schools. And then they come home at the end of the day and you got to work through whatever they learn. But you can take that responsibility back as a dad and as a family. When you do that, you take responsibility. You get to say everything that's good, you to say, that's my fault. Everything that's bad, you also have to be like, that's my fault. It's your ownership. So I think the fact that homeschool families have embraced responsibility in a way that maybe other families haven't, is like begging for this sort of thing where you say, I want our family to do well today and we're going to do it.
That's right.
Okay.
And I think too, one of the positives to add on that is just to encourage people in this regard, because so many people are having to go to public school. I mean, it's just a reality. Some people just have to endure in that situation. They're in that reality, but they may be wanting to get out of it. They may be thinking like, hey, this isn't where you want to be fully, but that's that strategic thinking we were talking about earlier. And I would encourage anyone who's in it, hey, don't be discouraged right now, because God's got you in a position of your life for the next step. Anything we're doing now is for our next step. So go ahead and put that on your prayer list. Okay, God, we don't want to constantly do this. We don't know how to homeschool, but we thought about it because we see the trajectory of society. And so you start that seed, you start that plant in there. It was a silly thing to kind of amplify that. I had a guy I did a quote for 4 years ago and wound up saying, nah, well, let's not do it. We can't justify it. 4 years later, he came back. Can we readjust that quote? Well, the seed was planted and I didn't even think about it. I just kind of had written it off. No big deal. But that tree was growing in the forest. So plant that seed with God now. And you might not be able to do it this year, but you've got the seed started. And then you start building that map. And God's a big proponent on small steps lead to big progress. He was faithful in little, will be faithful in much. So ask him, okay, I want to do this. How can I do this? Help me pay attention to what I need to do. Help me then concretely write it down and build my strategy. Help me communicate my strategy. And if you want to get out of it, unfortunately, there's some single dads out there, single moms out there who are having to, unfortunately, go through the system because they don't have that team word on the back end. I think homeschool, you having that community around you is key. It's big and it's important. Pray for your teammates as well. If there's a way that you might can encourage another, if you're a homeschool person, I'm constantly thinking about guys who are asking me questions on a regular basis. How are you doing it? How are you doing this? I'm ready to give a defense and ready to give an answer. But go ahead and start that strategy. If you want to do it, if you have to do public school, if you're watching this podcast, please don't be discouraged, because God's got you looking at different avenues, and you might be a light in the dark world that you need to be at that moment, that other people around and be like, hey, they're here, but they're also different. And some of your kids are examples to other kids, whether you see it or not. And those kids are seeing, my wife, she was a certain belief, and then she came to a different belief because she just saw a different example from me. And so your kids may be an example for someone else. And if you have to be in a public school and you have to have that kind of situation, please eat with your kids. Please take that time with your kid, because if you do have to unlearn certain things, get yourself out of the world, get yourself out of your phone, get yourself out of the distractions that you got, and actively put calendar time on your calendar and say, this is time I'm going to be with my kid one-on-one to answer any question, to listen to anything they're going, and then have my strategy. How can I constantly combat what they're doing? Because that's going to be a big win as well.
That's such good advice, Steve. You just said that like it was like everybody knows that. That is such good advice. Because I think a lot of people, a lot of dads, we're busy, like working, we're doing all this stuff, but we don't put it on the calendar. I'm going to spend time with kid number 1 today, and just let them talk to them, let them share their heart with us. Is that right? Yeah, that was really good. And listen to that. That was really good advice.
You know, my wife and I are big proponents of, she spends one-on-one time with the kids. I spend one-on-one time with the kids. You know, I just took my daughter out on a date, just took my son to his first Major League Baseball game. And then I took my wife and saw young Washington. So it's important. And if you feel like your parents or somebody's not able to watch them, sometimes you just got to tell them, like, hey, we're doing this. Can you, if they say no, that may be the time you have to take them with them. You don't have a support system. But also pray for maybe someone to come into your life that can support with that help. But my daughter, at first didn't really want it. She's 10 now, so she's feeling like she's 30 years old, got her driver's license, everything. She didn't really want to go with dad this time and have a date, or I didn't have to wear a dress. But once we got there, and all these people were like, I'm so glad that you're with your dad. I'm so glad I've seen your dad. At the end of the night, she was like, I'm happy to be with one day. You know, it's like a win. And then it's the same with my son, you know, just having that time to, you know, have that macho man, building him to be a real man of leadership, a real encouraging, and having that extra time where he can just be a boy, he can just be a guy, and nobody's telling him, oh, that's bad, that's it. And no, he's just a guy. He likes eating big hot dogs, he likes watching fireworks and home runs and stolen bases. Yeah, me too, you know. That's awesome. But also my wife, you're just having that time with her and that romance. And you have a great relationship with your wife, but, you know, because we're constantly spending time with them. And, you know, your kids are very stable because you spend time with them. And I think that is absolute key. Like, if there's nothing that you see it even in autistic kids who are nonverbal, motor skill type kids. If you just spend time with that kid and read to them and do things with them, and if they're in a wheelchair and you just bring them around, it blows me away of just how, you know, God's made them in His image as well. That they have a personality, they have a human, they have a spirit. There's a little boy that we all know. He's in a wheelchair. Him and his brother, they were conjoined twins, and he's unfortunately nonverbal, and he's got difficult motor skills. That boy will talk through a computer, and I was cracking jokes with him the other day, and he was getting some of these dad jokes, and he was laughing. And then, like, he would do something in the computer, and he'd be like, "That's lame," you know, and stuff like that. I was like, he's a human. Like, there's personality. That kid helped me understand. They just want to be with other people. They just want to be with the people they look up to.
And I think we're at camp right now, and I think that's one of the best things I enjoy about camp. All these kids are looking up to these other adults who are just spending time with them and thriving and doing so much. And as humans, we want to spend time with each other. So I encourage, like, you know, we're talking about this. It's a mathematical equation. If you have a dad or a mom who want to spend time with your kids, that equals that kid will be more balanced in their life. It's a mathematical equation. One more question, which you touched on, romance, taking time with your wife. So it's a two-parter. You can answer however you can. How do you support your wife in the homeschooling journey? Because if I understand it correctly, she does the bulk of the educating while you're at work. Yeah. But I understand that you do jump in and do some things. So I'm curious, what do you do to support her? Also, since you already talked about date night, how do you keep the romance? How do you schedule in date nights? How do you make sure that you're spending time with your wife as your wife, not as mom and teacher, where she's wearing all that baggage of like the stress of day to day? How do you remind her that she's beautiful and you love her and she's your wife? And then I got one final question. We'll end the gap.
So to address, you know, all that together, first and foremost, I got to be balanced. So if my relationship with God is not solid, if I've got too much distractions and stress in my own life, if I'm not taking time to self-reflect or to self-analyze or just to meditate, to clear my brain, I'm not ready for my family. A lot of times I'm thankful for the drive home that I have because I always tell my wife, let me digress. And when I get home, I'm going to change. And I communicate with them. I'm going to change, and then I'll be ready for everybody. I've got to digress. I've got to be.
Oh, let me stop you. You said change. Do you think that the act of changing clothes, you know how you can like go into places and the setting shifts your mood? Do you think there's something about the like changing clothes and saying, okay, I was at work, I took all that off, now I'm home? Is there something to that, or is it just is that not a factor of it?
It would make sense if it would be, simply because, if you look sharp for a presentation at work, you're not going to show up in a pair of jeans. And some people might, but now if you got to be on a construction site, like we're talking about a formal setting, we're going into, like if I have to go into a CEO talk at a bank, or if I go through the executives, I'm going to dress nice. I'm going to look the par, because if I got a clean cut haircut, if I look the par, I feel more put together, ready to go, and confident in that, and ready to be a leader because I've prepared myself, physically, mentally. My wife, girls, they'll do the same thing. They want to look pretty and want to feel like they're prepared. We're both made in God's image. God is not ugly. God is beautiful, and God prepares himself properly before he shows up in the human beings. He made sure every time he came face to face, he was prepared. And so I have to look at that. The last time we read about what class looks like is when he's flaming eyes, full of power and glory, got pure white, get all his robes. He's the Mac Daddy, and he's prepared. He's ready for their next step. And when God's ready to come back, and Jesus Christ comes back to the earth and he's ready to fight, he changes his clothes. He puts on armor, and he's ready to now fight and battle. So I think, if a hockey goalie didn't prepare, if he just wore what everybody else wore, he's like, oh, well, they're playing hockey too, that dude would be annihilated on that. Those pucks coming at him by 100 miles an hour. He's wanting those pads. And the same thing, if I go act like a slob in front of my executives, they're going to look at me completely different. And unfortunately, we have a world that looks like that, but God's going to look at me differently too. He's going, why are you not taken seriously in life? You had a moment to go in front of King Charles, President Trump, even President, no matter who you are, what you like. If I had the opportunity to meet President Biden, I would shake his hand and I would give that man respect, because God put him in a position of power beyond my control. If I had the chance to meet President Obama, I'd do the exact same thing. If I had the chance to meet President Trump, I would do the exact same thing, because me and my own life of balance, I understand God's put men in place and he wants me to be ready for that moment, but also I wouldn't show up as a slob. I'd show up prepared. I'd formally shake their hand. I'd listen to them. I'd say, thank you, sir, for this opportunity. And you'd be in that moment, but you'd be changed for a moment. So I think there's a lot of truth to what you're bringing up here. So when I come home, I can't immediately go play with the dogs and the kids in my nice clothes from the bank. But when I do change and I get ready for doing the yard work, I get ready to play with the kids, I get ready to play dogs, now I'm shifted into that perspective. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
But it also gives me time to change, kind of digress, say a little silent prayer, like, okay, God,
Help me be present. Help me, Dad.
yes, you have to. And then for my wife to support her in those moments, one, I have to be mentally, physically ready. I have to be ready with Price. I have to be, I go to the gym on a regular basis so I can be mentally, physically strong for her, physically strong for the kids. I also made it a conscious choice as a dad to, if I was in an environment back in the day and I had to hunt all day for my family, I would have to hunt all day for my family. But now we're in a different shift. So my role now as a provider is to go do my job well so I can have a job to provide for the family with income, to budget properly so that income is spread out accordingly and we know where it's going and we're not running out of it. We're being disciplined with our finances so we're not slaves to the finances. So she's then not stressed out. But I'm also consciously listening to her and asking, what do you need here? What do you need financially here? What do we need to plan for here? What have you noticed with the kids that we need to do? And every time I come home, I'll ask, what do I need to help you with? I see you got some things going on. It might be the dishes. It might be, hey, can you just take the kids out and let them ride bikes so I can get away from them who have been there or there?
I walk every dad who's just living in it knows exactly about that.
That was exactly right. And then another one, she may say, hey, can you finish their curriculum? And it's all about sharing the load, however the load may be. I think when we start focusing on ourselves too much and we're not balanced with that relationship, we will think the other person's not doing enough. We will say, well, I go to work all day and my wife just sits home with kids and that gumming, I just want to come home and relax. Well,
Right.
if I'm thinking about what she needs and I'm trying to get out of myself because I'm focused on extreme ownership, as a man, I got broader shoulders. I can put up with a little bit more sometimes than she can put up with. She's the weaker vessel, as much as people hate that, blah, blah, blah. Women do have emotional brains, and it's just a fact of reality. We've got box brains. We could take a box of emotions, put them in the back corner, and we can take our intense and we can just act. Gotta bring out the emotions at some point, you know? But women, it's like if you ever drive in a big city, you got these bridges going over where that's their brain, you know? So it's hard to get those emotions away from that action. So as dads and as men, really, we're needing to dwell with them with understanding, but understand where they're at, what they're needing, what the kids need, and ask those questions, because as generals of our family, we've got to have that strategy that's working.
I mean, that's fantastic. That's really good. And sometimes like if we're truly having that relationship with God, we're okay with her giving us a little critique too. Like sometimes my wife, like, I really have been needing this, and it's just not happening. Would you please think about it this way? Now, it doesn't matter how she brings it up. Sometimes she can bring it up in a feisty way.
If I'm not solid with God, I'm gonna react to that. But if I'm solid with God, I'm gonna listen to, okay, well, she's telling me something. She may not be angry at me, but she's telling me a pain and need, and I'm needing to help solve. That if I just am balancing my own life, if I'm taking extreme ownership, I'll listen to that. I'll analyze it. I won't get offended by it, and we'll adjust the play for it. And it's cool.
You'll hear the truth in it. You'll hear the truth in it and say, and she's right, I haven't done X, Y, Z.
That's exactly right. And she'll come back. She's like really helping you as well. She'll come back and say, I noticed a month ago when I missed you, you really took the time, stepped up, even with our kids, because kids can be annoying sometimes. We're busy. We got something to do. They always want to ask 1,000 questions, but you're in that very important situation that you're trying to figure out. And if you annoy me, it's my fault. And that goes back to extreme ownership. It goes back to really focusing yourself with God. And I think being able to see what my wife needs, because I'm honestly seeing what God wants me to do as a man, that's helping me provide for her. But I think one of the biggest keys I provide for her is spiritual leadership from the family. So many people in society are banking on the woman being the leader of family strategy. God didn't plan for that. He didn't establish that. And so my kids appreciate that I'm setting an example that they read about through scripture. Like, my son gave me probably one of the coolest compliments in the world when we were reading about David and Goliath, and he goes, well, Dad, you probably could have just punched Goliath and he would have been knocked out. And I was my son sees me as a champion. It's like, I didn't want to discourage that, but I say, well, hopefully I had God on my side just like David did, buddy, because Goliath was pretty big. We'd have to do what God wanted, But it was big boy, son. That's a big boy. But if we're not setting that spiritual example, we're selling our family short, because they want to know that in a moment of truth that we'll stand up and do things scary. Because there are oftentimes as dad, I'm like nervous about something. I'm like, how's this going to work out? But I have to do it scared and exercise that courage for them, and not let them know that, like, deep down inside, I'm probably not enjoying this. But it's for them, it's for their benefit, because they at some point need to make a decision in life. They need to make a tough choice, and they want to see that example. So my wife truly appreciates that. She says to me often, like, I'm thankful that you're willing to take the kids, your Bible study and prayer with them. I'm thankful that you take the kids to church if I'm not feeling good, and you don't make an excuse to stay at home as well. Like, if she's truly sick, and my daughter told me, she's like, I like going to church with you, Dad, because you're early. It's like, it's setting that example really helps them. They feel more calm. They feel more at peace about certain things. And I think that's, to me, is my biggest contribution for my family. Some of y'all may be atheists. I don't know how many we got out there, but just do the science behind it. Just do the mathematical analyzation of stuff. So you make a couple of good choices, you will see a couple of good
effects that come from it. If you make good financial decisions, you will see good financial blessings come from it, whether you see it as financial effects or financial blessings. If you treat people with kindness, people will return you in kindness. If you treat people like they're the worst person in the world, you're going to have that retreated in kindness. So I always encourage, even if you don't believe in God, just do actions and you'll see positive and negative results. And then you can analyze that. If this works, to fine. No matter what religion, you usually see a good and an evil, no matter white magic, black magic, yin, yang, the two on the shoulder, like the good angel, the bad devil. There's probably a reason for that, because God put two trees in there, knowledge, good and evil, and knowledge, life. And so no matter what you believe, you're always going to have some kind of double choice mantra. And if you make good choices, you'll see good effects. You make bad choices, you'll see bad effects. I think that's key. Be solid in your decision making, then you're solid in your positivity, your negativity. And like I tell my kids, you can or you can't, you're probably right.
So what I want to dig a little bit more in, because I didn't quite touch on how do you keep the romance alive?
Oh, yeah.
Homeschooling,
I think I missed something.
it's stress all the time. She just took notes. You got stress all the time. And I know my wife is like, look, I've not been like your sexy wife today. I've been mom, and like the kids are sick, and I had to cook, I had to clean, and I had 19 jobs, and you're coming home weekend at, and wish. So how do you keep the romance alive when your wife is like touched out a lot of times? Like, you have the kids all day long. So do you have any strategies for that?
Yeah, romance is one of those unique situations. You're so right. When girls get taxed out, man, they don't want to have any situation comes. And I think, if I'm paying attention to her and I'm coming home and asking her first what she needs, they're like a diesel engine. You got to warm that bad boy up when it's cold. And, we're like high octane top fuel traction right away. It's like, look how good looking she is. She needs emotional support first before she can then be turned on. That's something I truly learned. Like, just, a woman needs that emotional connective. She needs to not have those extra stress before she can think about that turn on of the emotion that she then has toward you. So she's not paying attention to me and her romance, like her emotion toward me. I just kiss it goodbye. Yeah, that's right. But when I go home and I ask and I focus on certain things and I get her out of that frustration zone, she can kind of get away. She can digress a little bit. She's a different lady in the next 30 minutes or so, whatever time it takes, 15, 10, even just a little bit. Even sometimes just you being willing to sacrifice yourself a little bit to get her out of that. She's like, love. I try to stay habitually aware of that with my wife. But we've developed, we were friends first. And I think that's cool too. We had a friendship beforehand, so we knew each other's personalities pretty well when we got into it. She knew I'm kind of a silly guy. She likes dad jokes and other things of the source. But I'm also showing that romance in front of my kids. Like, a lot of guys are like awkward about it. Like, I don't want to kiss in front of my kids. I'm smacking my wife's butt. I'm grabbing my kids like, do it again, daddy, do it again. Ha ha ha, he's trying my butt. And because I want it to be fun too. I want it to not just be like, okay, if I smack the butt, we need to immediately go to the bedroom and have sex. And no, I want it to be fun because I'm seeing her as a person as well. I'm seeing her as my teammate, my beautiful bride in life. I love how the Bible puts it, like, be intoxicated with her love, you be drunk with your wife's beauty. And I always tell her, I'm like, hey, God commanded me to enjoy these breasts today, baby. I had not obeyed that command today, man. We're both Christians, so we need to. It's showing that. She's like, okay. But we don't do that in front of the kids, but we try to keep the spark alive in those little moments. Yeah. But also, I think one of the biggest keys of that romance is us paying attention to it. As the guys, we really got to take that leadership and say, hey, we can box ourselves out of the moment. We can stand away from the forest and we can see some of the big picture things that are happening. So my wife is overly sad. She ain't going to want anything to do with me. But if I help her get all this done and we got about 30 more minutes before we go to bed, yeah, we're both going to be satisfied in so many different ways. But too, a woman wants that connectivity with us. So, if we're going outside with her and finding ways to take her on walks, finding ways to maybe even just, sometimes I'll be like, come here and sit with me on the couch, and I'll put her in my lap. We'll just hold each other for a little bit and snuggle. And kids always have like a parent hugging sense. Spider-Man had a spider sense. Anytime you show affection to your wives, like the dogs start coming and the kids start coming, it's like, but that's a beautiful thing too. If you're doing the romance well, right? God's showing that extra blessing that you've got a solid family. I think paying attention to that, but the romance is just a intentionality. I can't get that through enough. Be intentional. If you need to, calendar it out. Like I have to calendar sometime just to make sure, even if I don't do it that time, it needs to happen. And I can adjust it to a little bit later because this has happened. But it's reminding me on a constant basis, get out of yourself, get the bigger picture, focus on that little
Less selfish. What does she need? I know last time she needed this. I'm just going to do that. Not because you're going to expect sex later, but, oh, hey, babe, you saw that I did that thing. Not that. But, like, I know that you're overtaxed. I'm going to take that burden off of you because I got broad shoulders. I can kneel. I could do some dishes. I could tidy up. I could take the kids out and we could go do something to give you some alone time. Whether that results in, like, is sometimes to do that. I'm guilty of, like, keeping a tally. Like, oh, look at all these things I did for you. I mean, that's absolutely the wrong way to approach it for sure. But the way you're talking about it is focus on something other than yourself. That's Sakura. You're gonna be paid in some way, but you gotta get less selfish.
Yeah, I think that's been something that I've really learned in my own life with my marriage. I don't always expect sex. I love my wife just as much if nothing ever happened that week because she's my teammate in life. I committed to her. I chose to be her husband in good, bad, difficult situations. I always have to think, like, if something were to happen to my wife and I could never have sex with her again, what would I do then? And so if I'm focusing on just, as you were talking about serving her, if I'm focusing on just making sure that whatever she needs, as much as I can handle in my own life, take care of it, the kids are taken care of, we're going to have a far greater union. Yeah. And their relationships going to be blessed. And if the relationship's blessed, I appreciate my wife sometimes if she's on her time to month. This, she said, you've been such a good guy, so I'll just help you out. And it's like, you know, it's right. Yeah, I appreciate that. You're kind of hot earlier. You're thinking about me. You're thinking about me too. You're being less selfish as you. And that's the win because we're both thinking about each other, right? We're both encouraging each other. And it truly comes down to, again, am I selfish in my thoughts or am I not selfish? Am I a servant leader or am I a sponge leader? I'm sucking everything out. No, I'm a water fountain. You know, I'm constantly giving that good nourishment to my family. Dates, that's another thing. We're talking about romance. If I don't date my wife, she's telling me, I need to get away. Yeah, I need to get away. I think just taking time to, please budget because planning for trips, you want to plan for small dates, you want to plan for medium dates, weekend eventually, but you also want to plan for weeks at a time, getting away the kids, getting away from your family, and going on good anniversary shows. They're going on good dates because we've come back so much more romance solid. And there's like new levels that we hit, and we're like, man, let's stay on that. That's great. And you just see it's like you're building an extra layer of that castle that you're building. And I really appreciate running into people who are 65 years married, 50 years married, 40 years married. They'll come into the bank and I'll say, you missed some advice. Fun to me. You got the superficial nonsense stuff. Like, I'll be honest, this is a pet peeve of mine when guys are like, you say yes, dear.
Yeah, that's stupid advice.
Why? I mean, why? She wants me to not say yes sometimes. She's asking for me, like, what are your thoughts on this? And I say, it's probably not the best thing that we've got going on right now. But other guys are like, whatever you want, like, put up your fight, girl, stuff like that. You got to be a leader. You got to be an active man. And so the people who truly have been married for a very long time, one of the things that I've constantly found them say is love your wife and be committed. Like, we just commit to this. Like, there is no going back. And yeah, of course, part of that is you're not going to be looking for every Tom, Dick, and Jane to go and mess around with because you've committed to her. She's the one. You're intoxicated with that one. And they always say, keep the romance out, but find ways to be alone. Take her away from the kids for a couple minutes and just play around a little bit and then come back out. Just be silly, enjoy it. And it's always the same things. It's the basics. So you go back to the basics. Love your wife. She respects her husband. You find time for each other and you ask each other for your needs and you actively try to say, well, I'm going to try to do that for you. Dude, it's a win.
This has all been fantastic. So far I've been asking all the guys kind of a similar question. So I'll end with this last question. Do you have a vivid memory as a kid spending time with your dad? I mean, this podcast is for dads. And a lot of times we can remember these memories with our dads and they're so vivid to us, but we're not always thinking, okay, how can I make sure that I'm making vivid memories with my kids? So is there a memory that is there something that's vivid you can remember spending time with your dad that you still think about today?
Yeah, for sure. If you don't mind, there's two things that really kind of stand out as a kid and as an adult. The kid, my dad and I used to go, if you're ever in the southeast of the United States, you ever go to South Carolina, there's something called the Jockey Line. It's a big flea market, and you go jockey for your prize, and that's why they call it Jockey Line. Some people call them swap meets, whatever you call them. Every Sunday, we would go to the jockey lot because Dad ran a business, and he's most of the time busy throughout the week. But I could always go with him to the jockey lot, and then I could always go with him to the post office. He would let me check the mail. He'd let me open the check, see how much money came in for the business. And then we would go to the business, and I would watch him do his books, and then I would watch him walk around, make sure the equipment's good to go, everything. And so I'd walk around and learn how to be a business owner. But we would also find those cool deals at the jockey lot, and I would learn negotiating skill, learn friendships, business relationships. And that was always a cool experience for me because I am blessed to still have my dad. Like, he's 84. And that man will go to the jockey lot every Sunday on a regular basis. And what's been cool is now that it's been passed on to my kids, they want to go spend time with granddaddy at the jockey lot. If I'm at the jockey lot selling something, like sometimes I'll sell little items instead of having to worry about eBay and all, I can guarantee you I can ask my dad to watch my table. He will be there if I have to go use the restroom. And I got a trustworthy person to come watch that table. Yeah. And so to me, that's been a really fun memory for me because that was my time with Dad. That was my time to learn his routine. Ask the questions. Why do you do this, Dad? Why do you make your books like that? What do you feel like when you touch your equipment? Do you enjoy this? Like, how do you do a difficult business deal? How do you maintain good relationships? I would ask him as a kid all these things that now I'm using on a regular basis. So that's a very vivid memory as a kid to where I now see going back in my kids and that beautiful, this the crown of his old care, so to speak. But now as an adult, I have truly enjoyed taking time to just ride with my dad to different areas. If we get an opportunity to ride together, we do something called Toastmasters. We call it Spokesman's Club. It's the Toastmasters tile painting. And I take my dad every once a month. We'll go up together. As he's getting older, it's better for me to drive. And these moments now, I can pick his brain as an adult. As a kid, you don't really think about the philosophy and psychology and the nuances of his terrible relationship. And sometimes you're like, well, my dad just acted a certain way and this. But as I've gotten older and quizzing him and just drawing him out like a well and kind of asking him, what about this situation in your life? He had a really terrible marriage in his life, and that affected his first batch of kids. And all of them had a shift at that moment when Mom ran on. And Mom did her thing through them. They either struggled with work addiction or they struggled with some kind of other addiction. And it's been really cool now as an adult to ask my dad poignant, detailed questions and have him really open up to me. And as he's getting older, this heart's pouring out. He wants, before he dies, for us to know more about why he did good or bad decisions. And I used to kind of resent Dad because he was so busy at work. But now I understand why. He felt like he had to make sure everything was solid because his wife ran off on him in a very difficult situation where all his kids were a certain age. He had to just buckle down and provide. There was nothing else he could do to make sure they survived. And I see that now. So if you have your dad still around, or if you don't have your dad still around, remember moments that they've done. Find out about their history. Find out about what they had going on in their life when they were kids. Because I guarantee you're going to have a better respect for your father. And then, as what I do, you may do the same thing, is now I apply all those lessons to my kids. I purposely take time out of my work. I'm here at camp, thankful for my bank because they give me time off for school. They give me time off for volunteer. And this year, the 4th of July, Independence Day in the United States, everybody gets a full. We get Independence Day, by the way. they give us a floating day because it fell on a Saturday. So I've taken 4 days here at camp just because I planned and strategized that I can now be here with my kids. So don't think your work's too important for your kids. Don't think your work's too important for that romance of your wife. Because through my dad's positives and negatives, I've now been able to become a better man in my own life to then pass that on to my kids. Because we're going to make enough decisions that are detrimental for them. We're going to screw it up.
But if we can at least impart on them some of that wisdom, it's going to last for their generation, the generation after that.
And I think that's just been so fun to see him, my dad, but also moving as I get older to really appreciate him more instead of just being that old kid and understand.
I'm a fan of being very honest and open with your kids, not to the point where it's like dangerous for them or detrimental at like 6 years old. They can't understand quantum physics, and some of them might. Some of your kids are pretty brilliant out there. But like my kids would ask, they still ask, they say, why does that person act a certain way? They'll see a disgruntled homeless person, and they'll have someone who just out of sorts. They're probably either on drugs or something's happening where they're just not in the right state of mind. And they'll ask me like, why is that person happening? And so I'll say, well, let's talk about it a little bit. And he will say, you think they've always been like that. So my kids, like, if they see someone who's a little disgruntled, maybe like a homeless person, or whether they're on drugs or not, whatever they're doing, they'll ask, like, what's going on with that person? And I will talk with them and say, hey, well, let's kind of go back to the beginning of this person's life. This person was a kid like you at some point. We don't know their environment that they were going on with. At some point, they probably had positive influences and they probably had negative influences. Anywhere you're at in life, whether you're in this absolutely gangster neighborhood or you're at a premier, HOA kingship type community, you're going to have a positive or a negative influence. So if you're in a completely bad community, bad area, you got a coach, you got somebody who maybe a boxing legend or somebody's there trying to help the youth get a little better because they see the importance of it. And I try to tell the kids, like, we don't know what this person was doing. We don't know what their life has been like, and we'll walk through it. And at their age, they've always been able to comprehend, like, life's all about choices. Life's all about a positive and negative environment. And, every family's got positive and negative. And some family members aren't making the best decisions. They may not be making the best. Some people are like smoking the hardcore out of cigarettes. They're losing their teeth. They may not have the best language. But if you ask them to come help you on a work project, they're going to be there tomorrow. They're going to be early. And I try to help them see that, like, hey, your relationship, your uncle so-and-so, your cousin so-and-so, yeah, we hate what they're doing. But they will give you the shirt off their butt in a heartbeat if you ask, and they have the kindness here and they have the kindness there. So we're constantly trying to help them analyze their own decisions later on and their own decisions in life and not be so hard to hide things back from. Back to integrated material over time, my kids know the difference between male and female. They know it, especially through animals. They know that, male chicken likes to jump on backs of female chicken. They know that my dog, who's a male, has a penis and testicles, and the dog who's a female has a vagina. And they know these things because they see it. They're like, Dad, Abel's a little different than Dottie. Why is that? It's like they'll ask those questions. And so we're real.
So if some people would shy away from that, well,
that's like, when you're older. Yeah. Why? Yeah. Your kids asking you, God's giving you the wisdom as an adult to be mature enough to explain in a way where it's not over your head, but not too much that you're getting in all the itty gritties or everything. And I think it's so vital, even in my own life. I've seen my kids, they now at 2 to 6 can literally have an adult conversation because we've had those adult conversations very early on. We were having that conversation earlier at Kent Lake. Your kids want to do something with you, do something with them. It's going to take longer. It's going to be probably the worst job, but they're learning, they're growing. And I promise 2 years down the road, they're going to be way better than what they were. Guarantee it. And it's so important that we just be real and human, just like you and I can talk about certain things. We can talk about it deeper. I do the exact same thing with my kids. And that's why I was saying the integrated material over time. We were in Walmart the other day, and there was what I thought was a lady, because I haven't been there in a while, long hair, and was looking down because I didn't really see much of the facial features. And I was like,
I'm sorry, kids, that person doesn't seem like they want to show up for work today. They just seem like they want to play on their phone there. I said, that man or that woman. That's what I said. Yeah, that woman. And my daughter, she goes, she's been polite. So she pulls around the next aisle. She goes, Daddy, you haven't been here a while. That's a man. And I was like, really? She said, yeah, he used to have short hair and he's kind of weird. He just starts dressing all this, puts this in there. I'm like, and so I high-fived her and I was like, way to go, kid. You're learning more than most adults in other communities are learning about it. Because we've taken We've taken the time to explain. If you're a guy and you're wanting to start changing to one, we need to sit down and find out, where did this, so if you have something happen in your life, I'm an individual that did something to you that you need to figure out and focus on it. We need to address, because it's not a real, but my kids are now, because we're taking that time, we're not going crazy with it, but we're helping them realize, there is a reality and there is a fantasy that you might call it reality, but there's a truth and there's an evil, and that's black and white, Christ and Satan. That's the only two options we get, y'all. Christ is our savior. Satan is our destroyer. There ain't no other option. I mean, whether we like it or not. You get Gilgamesh or Noah, but they're the same guy. I just hate to break it to you. So one story might be Satan's version, but one story is God's version,
Man. Okay, so in this episode, we've covered a bunch of things. We talked about some of your military training, how that has impacted being positive, taking extreme ownership, recognizing your role as a father, and all of our roles as fathers is we have to set the course. We talked about the importance of spending time with our kids, the importance of spending time with our wives. We talked about romance and how to keep that romance alive. We talked a little bit about some financial blessings and just like budgeting. And I can absolutely share Justin's information. If you need some help financially, he can help you out. We covered a lot. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to her,
Man, it's my pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank everybody for listening.
Well, gentlemen, I hope you and your family learned something awesome today.